Hey, you're listening to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype we got Josh.
Hey.
We got a fair bit to get through, so we're going to start off by looking at the Blue Brand. They started to fill out their Survivor Series team a little more. We know Team Raw is super strong, stacked, full of heavy hitters, and we learnt this week that King Corbin manages to defeat Rey Mysterio and slot himself onto that team.
Yeah, rounded the team off nicely.
And then later on in the night, Seth Rollins defeats Otis and also grabs himself a slot on there. So at the moment, Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio not on the same team, and Team SmackDown looking pretty evil. Kevin Owens has got a lot on his plate.
Yeah, Raw's not the only team that's got issues.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of weeks now Kevin Owens and Jey Uso button heads. But yeah, Kevin Owens and the Team SmackDown at the moment, he's the only good guy with Jey Uso, King Corbin, and Seth Rollins standing behind him. Obviously, we don't know who's going to take that fifth spot, but
I've got a pretty darn good guess.
What's the guess?
Otis.
Is it going to be some sort of second chance triple threat? We'd never heard of those before.
More than likely.
It would make sense given that is what Raw got to fill in their last position. Was a second chance multi-man match. Let's talk about it. Which was Riddle versus Hardy versus Elias, with Riddle capturing the last spot on Team Raw. So again, this just plays into that whole thing that we were mentioning already, that Team Raw is stacked.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with this Survivor Series match.
It'll all be going in a certain direction, just based on the fact that it is probably going to be score kept. It'll be Raw versus SmackDown, and it'll be whoever when we get to that point. Because, you know, if you're telling me AJ Styles, Keith Lee, Sheamus, Braun Strowman, Riddle, Kevin Owens, Jey Uso, King Corbin, Seth Rollins, I'm going to be leaning towards Raw on pure strength, especially now that they have nicknames. You know, like, only a strong team come up with nicknames for each other. Even if people didn't necessarily appreciate their nicknames that Riddle ended up giving them. It just seems like nobody is able to get along, whether that be Team Raw's male team, Raw's female team. SmackDown's female team hasn't yet really been assembled, so it's a little bit easier for them to get along, because it's just two of them. Bianca Belair and Ruby Riott, but they will eventually get more members to stand alongside them as well.
Yeah, I just wonder how much the other ladies that will end up being on Team SmackDown will be able to handle Bianca Belair's attitude.
Attitude's a nice way to put it. I think she's going to be very, very competitive. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they slot in there, because I don't know exactly the SmackDown Women's division and how we're going to slot around and pick people, because Ruby Riott won a triple threat match, you know, so Zelina Vega and Natalya have already had a chance to make it onto the team, but didn't. But we do still have to fill 3 more slots, so could be a couple second chances coming up, maybe.
More than likely. Maybe even a battle royal or two.
Yeah. just to fill in that team that's going up against Team Raw's Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Mandy Rose, Dana Brooke, and the table breaker, or the breaker of tables, Lana. But if we stick within the women's division and we stick with SmackDown, Bayley did manage to get a SmackDown Women's Championship opportunity on SmackDown. It went the way we kind of expected. Sasha Banks keeping up her title, making Bayley tap out. It was a Bayley mistake. It wasn't a Sasha win. But then Carmella comes out and just attacks Sasha Banks and seemingly sets up the next championship feud.
Yeah, it's definitely a direction that there looks like they're going in.
And yeah, it's weird just because we thought Banks Bayley was gonna continue on for a little while longer, unless Carmella is sort of a pit stop, a roadblock, some would say, along that street that we already know we're heading down. Just because I don't think Banks and Bayley are finished yet. I don't think a simple little blow-off match on a SmackDown is what's going to end their massive feud. We're going to jump over to the Gold brand a little bit just because I like to give a little bit of context into the entrance theme, or the theme that we will be playing this week. So let's talk about the opening matchup on NXT this week for November 11th in the States, November 12th in New Zealand. Johnny Gargano, he's going to defend his NXT North American title. He had a wheel of challenges, and it spun up on someone we wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, there was a very funky wheel, to put it mildly. Obviously, it was designed to hit a specific person so that he could break the curse of losing a title as soon as he wins it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ended up on the themeless Leon Ruff.
Who I think is like, his win-loss record is like miles off. I want to say like 1-10 or something crazy. Nobody can expect him to pick up the win here against a champion.
Especially somebody with the pedigree that Johnny Gargano's had on NXT.
But he did.
Yeah, we have a new North American champion 2 weeks after we just crowned one. And we'll probably have another one in another 2 weeks. I will say this. I love the little story. The match was fairly good. It was short. It was what you would expect for the match. Damian Priest came out but did not get involved. He just stood out there, and it provided just enough distraction for Gargano to show off, to let his guard down, and he got caught in the fabled roll-up.
And 1, 2, 3, Gargano hates wheels again.
Yep. And then I love the backstage segment afterwards when he started to celebrate, and Damien gave him keys, said, "Get out of here, because Johnny Gargano's going to come through that door, and he's going to beat the crap out of you."
Yeah.
And he did just that. Gargano then started yelling like, "Whose idea was this?" And Damien just kept responding, "It was your dumb idea."
Yep. Gargano made an oopsies. He thought the wheels were on his side. He thought he could rig the wheels. That was wrong.
Yeah, karma is a bee, as they say.
Yeah. Obviously, this is just feeding into the bigger Gargano Damian Priest storyline, but it was a cool little way to give someone like Leon Ruff a moment, you know, from practically WWE obscurity, in terms of not really being a big name, to picking up a title off of Johnny Gargano. Forever in the record books, forever gonna be having that moment replayed. Could be the start of something big. It could be a little bit of a one-off, but either way, he benefits from it.
Yeah, I kind of like Leon Ruff, to be honest. I think there's something there that can be worked with. So we'll have to see. Uh, but hey, he's a major champion on a major program right now. So what? It can't get much better than that.
Well, it can get just one step better than that, which is we will play his theme. Oh no, wait, as you said, he has no theme. We'll play a theme in commemoration of him. That almost counts. But we will be playing Slipknot's All Out Life, the theme for NXT, to commemorate Leon Ruff's win. And maybe he gets a theme and we can play his actual theme at some point in the future. And you're back to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. I'm Grady, he's Josh. I don't want to leave NXT just yet. I want to stick around here for a little bit because I got some questions. We've seen this developing storyline with Xia Li. She's been asking for matches. Boa seemed to be giving her bad news, and it's perplexing sort of storyline. And then this week, Xia Li doesn't show up. Boa gets beat up by Raquel Gonzalez, and then we got a dragon flying around the Capitol Wrestling Center. We got a man showing up and giving an envelope to Boa and like painting his hand. What is happening in this storyline?
I have no idea, but clearly it's not good for Xia.
I'm loving the fact that I have no idea what is going on, and it's not like a what the F kind of what is going on. It's like a what every time something weird happens, and it's got me. I want to know what's happening.
I'm interested.
And then just a piece to note, because I know we talked about it when we talked about Halloween Havoc. Obviously, both of the Garganos being helped by the person wearing the Scream mask, and everybody and their mothers knew who that was. But this week it was revealed to be Indy Hartwell. But, we already knew that. And it seems as though the feud or the storyline is either going to be Candice LeRae and Indy, or just Indy taking on Shotzi Blackheart. I think it's going to be 2-on-1 with a little bit of help maybe for Shotzi.
I really don't know. I still mourn the loss of that tank.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just rolling along. That storyline continues. Satsuki at least is still being elevated, and maybe eventually she'll get another shot at Io Shirai and her title, because she almost beat her on NXT a few weeks back, and then she'll get to be champion.
Just rolling along is what that truck did over Shotzi's tank. I had to, I'm sorry. RIP tank, but I had to. Yeah, the NXT Women's Division is just so stacked, with Ember coming back, with Toni Storm there. There's so many challenges potentially for Io, assuming she makes it through Ripley. Raquel Gonzalez is getting elevated at the moment. As you say, Shotzi Blackheart is getting elevated. The talent pool is great. It is great. now to jump over to the red brand. We already talked about the second chance triple threat match that saw Riddle capture a spot on Team Raw. Let's instead just try to encapsulate all of the 24/7 antics. Just scoop it all up and put it together. But to me, the big moment was Drew Gulak attempting to join the Hurt Business.
I bet that was funny.
Yeah, it was a good one. It would have been funny to see happen. You know, it was never going to. But it was really just a setup for R-Truth to win back his championship. Which then later on in the night, I don't know, is there a full count of how many times this title changed hands? Because the answer was a lot.
I don't know. All I know is Tucker ended up winning it twice.
Yeah. Akira Tozawa won it. Eric, Drew Gulak, Grand Metalik, Lindsay Dorado, all won it at least once. As you say, Tucker got it twice. Eventually it all ended up with R-Truth taking it home. But everybody seemed to get a go at it. Etch their names into the... I don't even know if that one's a record book at this point, or if it's just a, goddamn 16-year-old girl's notebook with just scribbles written across it. Especially if you're trying to write down all of these title changes that happened across the space of maybe 5 minutes. It was a good little comedy moment, but I think as much as he is absolutely brilliant with it, it feels like we've had R-Truth for pretty much a year now, being the standard bearer or the flag holder for the 24/7 championship. It seems like he always takes it home. Other guys might capture it, but they're not going to hold it for more than a week unless you're Rob Gronkowski. And then eventually R-Truth's going to just capture it back and hold on to it. I'd like to see some non-R-Truth long-term reigns, or I want to say storylines, but the 24/7 championship doesn't really get storylines. Things happening. Let Tucker have it for a little while, then have Tucker and Eric fight it out, and just keep R-Truth away from it for a little while, but at this point, it's all he's got.
Yeah, use the 24/7 championship as an excuse to bring Tucker to SmackDown so that he can interact with Otis.
There's so many things you can do with this title. It's one of those things where it's like, this could be a really cool concept, but you gotta do some stuff. You gotta make it different. You can't just always be falling back on what you know is good, which is R-Truth. You know he's a comedic genius. You know he's great with the 24/7 title, but you gotta try some other things sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes there's just, you have to do something a little bit different, a little, just like, for example, Leon Ruff, for example. And
that's a lot different.
See what happens. And see what happens. But yeah, I think as great as R-Truth is in this role, I do agree. It's more than time to move past him and either expand the 24/7 division or stamp it out completely.
It'll be interesting to see if WWE do that, or if they're just going to stick with, I guess, the tried and true Truth and just chug along. I think he's got 44 reigns at this point. Nobody cares that number's going up even bigger. Let's get some wacky poop happening. But something that we did get as well on this show, main event of Raw, Drew McIntyre and the New Day teaming up Really good team. I like that trio. To take on Randy Orton, The Miz, and John Morrison.
Yeah, just reminding Randy Orton that one of his teammates has a certain contract that can alleviate him of his championship at any time he chooses.
Yeah, I think that was laying in the back of his mind, as was Drew McIntyre, because Orton just straight up refused. He just did not come down. He did not get tagged in. He did not participate in this match. And ultimately, he just left John Morrison to get his head kicked off.
Who knew that would be John Morrison's role when he came back to WWE? It was to be the guy that takes everything instead of Miz.
Yeah. It's definitely a little bit different than I thought. When the news came of, John Morrison's coming back to WWE, thought maybe, he'd have a little bit of a team with The Miz and then maybe break off, they'd have a feud, and then he'd be shot off into doing something else. And they've really stuck with this Miz and Morrison thing pretty much since his return. And as you say, he is also the one that takes the fall 90% of the time.
Yeah, and I never really saw that much in Morrison. So I'm not that surprised.
He's got abs. I don't. And he does some flippy stuff, which I also don't. I don't do a lot of things, okay? But yeah, it'll be interesting, obviously, as you say, because The Miz does still have that briefcase. Drew McIntyre and Orton, I believe, has been booked next week on Raw for the WWE Championship. Well, what are we gonna see next week? We got Drew versus Orton for the title. The Miz on the sideline with the contract. The Fiend still floating around, seemingly with his target set on Randy Orton, and a matchup with Roman Reigns down the line at Survivor Series. A lot going on in his head.
Yeah, lots going on. We really don't know too much about the future, because the plans have basically been put on ice for Survivor Series. For all we know, Miz may end up being the WWE champion after next week, and then get murdered by Roman Reigns. We really don't know what the future holds here.
Yeah, well, that's our final Raw before Survivor Series next week. So I'm gonna ask you for a prediction or for a bet of who do you think out of The Miz, Orton, Drew McIntyre, or magically The Fiend is gonna be walking into Survivor Series 2020 with the WWE Championship?
I'll say Randy Orton, just because I'm kind of interested in how they'll play that match out.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, it's either going to be Randy Orton or The Miz.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be Drew, sorry.
Okay.
And wouldn't make any sense for The Fiend to become the champion on Monday. So it's got to be either Randy Orton or The Miz. And I really want to see how they would play Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns, with them both being heels. And being the top heels in the company too.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more thing before we run out of time, because there is also another match next week on Raw that could change the landscape of Survivor Series. I believe the New Day will be defending their tag team titles against the Hurt Business, who walks into Survivor Series as the Raw Tag Team Champions and goes up against the Street Profits.
I'm hoping it's the New Day. Because again, I want to see the New Day versus the Street Profits.
That's fair. We always get one title being changed the week before a Raw versus SmackDown Survivor Series. So one of them might switch, one of them might flip-flop on us, but we're not expecting it.
Well, usually it's because one of the titles is currently being possessed by Brock Lesnar. The other one ends up changing.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. You think this is going to be the first Survivor Series where the no titles change hand in the run up to Survivor Series? Are we making that prediction?
I'm going to say there's an 85% chance of that happening.
Okay. And then often that little 15% plans change and it looks a little dodgy-wodgy.
Yeah, the 15% is the Miz cashing in and becoming WWE champion.
Okay. What if Drew McIntyre just steals the briefcase and cashes it? Maybe.
Stop the cash in.
Okay. Maybe Drew won't win. But we will have to find out next week because we are all out of time for this week. It's been great talking to you.
Bye.
You can visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/WrestlingRadio, Twitter page, twitter.com/WrestlingRadio, and we'll see you next week with our preview for Survivor Series.